Thank you for coming. This is a great turnout. This is to discuss the campus development plan and have a presentation by Broad's Planning, which is intended to focus on the next sort of 5 years and really operationalizing our strategic, or rather our campus master plan. We are growing rapidly, as many of you know, here on campus. We have a lot of projects. We need housing because we're behind on housing more than anything. And therefore that puts pressure on parking and, of course, the academic building. So in order to get all those things here with our limited land, we need to plan carefully, and that's what we got Broad's planning to do. So they're going to go through a presentation, and then there'll be time for questions and answers. I'm happy to see so many of you here, and especially Dr. Ottavio. He's listening, so I will do the same and not try to influence, because I have my opportunity to influence them otherwise. But this is really for you guys to hear and provide your input and feedback. So without further ado, let me introduce Stephen. Stephen is the president of Broad's Planning with his team of planners in Andrew and Paul. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leaper. Well, thank you guys for coming out this afternoon. This is a fabulous turnout, and we couldn't hope for a great participation. I don't know, maybe kind of school break here, we have a little bit more breathing room after the big push. But thanks very much for coming out. As Ty mentioned, my name is Stephen Colston with Broad's Planning. I am joined by my colleague Andrew Broderick, who is project manager and the lead planner on this project, as well as Paul Ward, who is one of our other team project planners that have been working away diligently on this effort for the last several weeks. We had the opportunity earlier this year to work with the university developing some strategies around the Memorial Football Stadium expansion program, and had the great pleasure of being invited back by Ty and Dr. Ottavio to visit a little bit more about your strategies for development planning over the next 5 years. We've been involved in some of the implementation, the nursing school, and the dairy facility. So it's just a great pleasure for us to be back on campus and get to work with a terrific group of people here at Stephenville. We've got about, I think we're probably going to spend maybe about 20 or 25 minutes or so in the initial presentation to you, kind of give you a little bit of feedback where we are. And then we want to open, we have a couple of probing questions that might get us started if necessary, but we want to open it up to you for any questions, conversation, and really this is an opportunity to be, for us to be a sounding board for you about any ideas, thoughts, concerns that you might have, or things that are potential for us to incorporate into this discussion as we move forward. So we'll talk a little bit about our process, what the overall schedule is for the project, and then Andrew's going to provide a little overview of some of the key drivers that have been identified that are helping prioritize this 5-year development planning strategy and update to your current master plan. And we'll speak a little bit about your planning context, the campus analysis, some of the design analysis, and then we'll begin to have some opportunity for discussion about how we might move forward. In terms of process and schedule, we've got 5 different phases that we'll be moving forward. We kicked off the project about a month and a half ago. We'll be moving forward through the end of the summer and into the early part of the autumn. We kicked off the project with the initiation phase. We'll move through, we're in the analysis phase of the project right now, where we gathered a lot of information, kind of drinking from a fire hose, getting up to speed, and now we're starting to crunch and figure out the implications of what some of this data actually means for us. And then we'll be preparing kind of big ideas, concept, vision, that will serve as the basis for development and refinement of the plan, ultimately into an implementation strategy for your projects that may help shape the physical environment here at Tarleton over the next several years, certainly over the next 5 years, and then potentially even there two after. The diagram behind me is not one that is trying to say that this is a linear process. We're not sure exactly what the path is that we're going to be taking as we move through it. There's a lot of different options, and that's part of why we want to meet with the community from the campus and really get your feedback. We have another session later this evening with folks from the broader off-campus community to participate as well. And we really want, because all these different parts and pieces that we touch, from campus walking tours and driving tours and data analysis and information crunching that we do, all shape the outcomes of this plan ultimately. In terms of timeline, I mentioned we'll be moving through on the project up until September. We're kind of right here at this period in May, so we're just coming off the end of the analysis period. We'll have a lot of heads down, have heavy-duty work time over the summer and into the fall before hopefully Dr. DeTavio, you'll be making a final presentation to the campus community and beyond in the fall, sharing the outcomes of all of your good work and input into this process. So we met with our initial steering committee, President's Cabinet Advisory Committee discussion this morning, met with the folks from the city of Stephenville. Actually picked up the rest of some of our tour. We did a physical campus tour the last time we were on campus, the main portion of the campus. We went out and toured the agriculture center today and looked at some of your other out parcels associated with the farm. Certainly our campus community forum this afternoon and our public forum this evening. Tomorrow we've got some further discussions. We'll be getting into landscape, doing some follow-on data collection and out briefing on the process today. We have a follow-up meeting later this week with the provost and some of the academic deans that will be providing additional input into programmatic implications that will shape the growth moving forward. With that, I'd like to transition over to Andrew, who's going to talk to you a little bit about some of the key drivers, some of the impetus for some of the planning elements that we are starting off on. Andrew?
Thank you, Steve. What we're calling here are the key drivers, the things that we're hearing from the campus community that we should really be focusing on for this project. Again, we're campus planners. We do this type of work across the state and really across the country as well, and we have the excellent opportunity at the beginning of each project to really learn what makes each campus unique, what are the hallmarks of this place here at Tarleton or wherever we're working, and how do we take that and make it stronger going forward. That's what we're starting to do here now in this analysis phase, and these key drivers are organized kind of thematically in 6 different areas. And I'll just kind of go through each one individually and relatively quickly, but they're all based in space issues, physical space issues. First one is academic space. Obviously, there's been a lot of building going on here over the last several years, and there will continue to be some building projects into the future. The Ag and Engineering building is something that the university has been focusing on for quite some time, and has been a #1 request for the tuition and bonds. That building will likely house an engineering program, specific college of engineering. Because that new facility will come online, programs are moving into it. What do we do with the spaces where they're currently occupied? It'll be some type of a backfilling strategy. Sorry. And so the engineering and technology building could be something that potentially could be renovated or added on to. We've talked about the Autry building being potentially renovated as well. And again, we're just starting to, no decisions have been made definitively yet. We're just starting to make a laundry list of different types of academic spaces that may need to be considered in terms of new construction, renovation, demolition, any type of modification. The College of Business is a strong program here, obviously, and the continuation of that program into the future may require some more space. And we're not just talking about quantitative space, we're talking about the right types of space for academic use. The picture in the background here is one that we use often to talk about contemporary learning environments that are active, high-tech, flexible, focused on group learning and teaching. These are types of things that we're seeing lots of universities do, and we understand that it's being done here currently, and will continue to be done in the future as well. We know that you recently started the Center for Instructional Innovation, enabling faculty to learn innovative instructional models that they can then incorporate in the classroom setting. Your library is shifting from an older library into a learning commons. Again, the notion of libraries being a place to find books is becoming, while it's still a function, more of an antiquated function compared to how modern libraries function in terms of facilitating group work activity, high-tech kind of access points or distance learning, that type of thing. The second key driver is student housing. A lot of new student housing is currently under construction here, and there's a commitment to this university of retaining its status as a residential campus, really focusing on the student experience for students to move here and live on campus, and that will continue to be the case in the future as well. Roughly, we're planning to add 2,000 beds by 2020, in about 6 years or so, is the metric that we're starting to work with right now. The Heritage Hall, which is under construction right now, which will be in operation in the fall, will be about 500 beds. So if you could picture roughly 4 more of those, give or take, that'd be about the impact that we're looking to have. And focusing, again, as Mr. Winkler said, on land that the university currently owns in an infill strategy. Athletics, recreation, and student life, the third category. Talking about, again, projects on a 5-year horizon. As Stephen mentioned earlier, we completed a facility program for Memorial Stadium. That's the rendering that you see behind me right now, is a new west grandstand for the home team. The majority of campus is this way. This is Harbin Road is out here. And this would be a new grandstand with modern press box, hospitality suites, and increasing the capacity of the stadium to 10,000 seats. That is phase 1 of a multi-phase project for the stadium. In addition to that project, they've highlighted the need, the President's Cabinet has highlighted the need for an aquatics center in the future, potential for either a dining hall expansion or a second location for a dining hall. Again, as more students live on campus, your current dining hall will require more space to serve those students. So that'll be one question that we'll be exploring further. A potential for an art gallery on campus is something that's been discussed. Parking. We call ourselves campus planners. Sometimes I feel like I'm a parking planner because it's a very important issue to address. It's very important for everybody here, if you're faculty, staff, students, visitors. Everybody needs parking. It's a general thing that we need to have for our campus to function. It also requires a very high amount of land, and in some cases it can be better utilized for other purposes. In some cases it's fine existing the way it is. So that's something that we'll always be addressing when it comes to the campuses, especially here in the U.S. is provision of parking. In some cases it may require us to think more critically about the shifting culture of parking. What we've found is sometimes where you're working within a confined land area and you need to build facilities for academic purposes or student housing. One likely place would be to build on some parking lots. And that comes at the sacrifice of parking spaces, which need to be accommodated through another means. We've seen this done successfully on other campuses as well with regard to a parking garage, or pricing changes, or demand reduction and eliminating or reducing the use of the private automobile on the campus through shuttle systems, car sharing. Some campuses don't allow freshmen to have a car, or bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. And we're not making these recommendations for this campus right now. We're just throwing these out here as potential solutions to consider with regard to how this campus wants to grow in the future. Five of six key drivers here is the campus landscape. You have some beautiful spaces on this campus with some excellent tree canopy coverage, and those are things that are assets that can be built upon into the future. Your military drive and the band shell and the military park there. What a great entrance into the campus from downtown on Tarleton Street. That's just one example. One thing, we spend a lot of time on your campus walking around, making observations, taking photographs. And one thing that's really, as a detail, stuck out to me are these garden walls with the field stones and the gates around campus. They're beautiful. You're at Tarleton State University, you've seen these things. And they're unique qualities that can be emphasized more in the future. But overall, we really need to think about campus landscaping from the campus-wide perspective, not just one space after the next necessarily. So one thing we'll be thinking about is where are there more opportunities for nice open spaces that are inviting, that are attractive to students when they're touring here for the first time or if they're on a study break. A couple of different things. You may be aware of the new campus, what we're calling a quad or green space just north of the admin building. In fact, we saw a construction sign up with the rendering of that new space. That's going to be an excellent space for the university going forward. Also, the pedestrian zones on Vanderbilt Street and Lillian, seeking to not just preserve those as their brick paver areas, close down the automobile, but facilitating student traffic or daily pedestrian traffic. Not just preserve those, but also extend them into the future. Enhancing the connection between the business quad and Lillian or any other part of campus. It's been our observation, at least, that the business area seems a bit isolated from the rest of campus. So how can we encourage pedestrian connections and connectivity back to the remainder of campus? Again, landscaping things we'll be looking at. A couple of infrastructure things, very important, obviously, is the guts of the campus. Chilled water loops, stormwater management, electricity, all that type of thing. We're certainly documenting the need in this project. We don't have an engineering partner right now, but there may need to be a future engineering study in the future. But we're here to kind of just document those needs and figure out in a high-level view different opportunities to address them. To give you some planning context, Paul, you want to go through the planning context? Oh, you just, okay.
Okay, so just taking a look at a little bit of your sort of enrollment history, typically, from its start as John Tarleton College, you've been drawing from a student population in a pretty immediate area to Erath County, the county surrounding. But speaking with Dr. Weisenberger, found out that the top 12 counties for 2014 applications were much more spread out down the I-35 corridor and the Texas Triangle. So you're drawing from major metropolitan areas all throughout the most heavily populated area of Texas. So you can see that all the way down to San Antonio, Houston, Austin, Waco, and of course up towards Fort Worth and Dallas. And the other large trend that we've obviously seen, and y'all are well aware of, is reflected in your housing demand and all the renovation and construction going on, is just growth in overall enrollment. And this is just enrollment figures here at the Stephenville campus. And, so you can just see that right now we in this year we've just topped 8,000 and projected out in the next 5 to 10 years to crest 10,000 and on to 12,000. Oh, thank you. So bearing that in mind, we want to kind of move into a little bit more of a physical analysis of the campus and Tarleton State University's place in the community. So this is kind of just a little orientation map to Stephenville, and you can see here we've got the main campus. We just got back from our tour of the agricultural campus, and so you can just see what a massive land holding that is. And so while we're going through the study, we're exploring connections of the university to the downtown, and of course you've got the Bosque River Trail Plan, and we understand that this segment has been completed up here, but the long-term plan, looking at how as the university grows, it can also tie into great community resources, and the community and the college can, the university, I should say, can feed each other. So, just some fun stuff here. Looking back, this is the site now, but major landscape improvement project. It's just looking back through the history of the university, where you come from, and it's really interesting to see the things that have been carried over, which buildings remain, which historic elements remain. Obviously, you guys have retained some of these great features around campus with the gates, the historic gates on, I believe, 4 different locations. This is the old administration building, which is now education. Some of these buildings have come and gone, but we still have Moody Hall, what used to be the recreation hall, which is now houses some administrative functions. But just need to look back at history. So you can also see where we've come from. Now, if everybody can see the smokestack here, that might help orient yourself to this street. And we got Washington here. That's a plane wing. Sorry if that's blocking your favorite building. And now we'll just reverse views. And so once again, the smokestack to help orient yourself. So what I think is interesting about these aerials is that it just shows that some of the physical decisions that you make on your campus can carry through for a really long time. This area here remains basically open for as a parking lot. Some of these buildings and these building sites carry forward into the future, and so they start to shape your campus for years into the future in terms of axial relationships and throughout the campus. So this is one of my favorite things to do. It's just a really simple diagram, but it's just all the existing buildings on the campus and surrounding in black, obviously. Yeah. So we are right here right now, if that helps you. But it just really goes to show how the university, what a different physical relationship it has to the land than, say, the surrounding neighborhoods. And it has a really great opportunity to shape and define spaces that you don't get in a typical urban environment. You have all sorts of different sizes and types of spaces that you don't get outside of the campus, where you have a much more regular grid. So you have a lot of opportunity to kind of be playful and think of great ways to move throughout a space and to experience a space. That just highlights all the. I'm going to kind of flip through these. We want to make sure we leave some time for question and answer. But highlighting just the university buildings. So that's basically the extent of the university's land holdings at this time, and that kind of helps show you where you have spaces on campus that are occupied by more buildings, so where the strongest core of the academics core is, and then moving out maybe where, like Andrew was saying, where you have some pretty large gaps in your fabric. And then I've got a better slide that will show this, but that just adds all the other paved areas onto campus. So you start to take a look at all the impervious surface on the campus too. So this kind of sets the stage for where we are right now. Everything in pink is a planned or ongoing building project, an improvement or a construction project. So once again, here we are, we're undergoing a renovation in this building right now. We've got new housing going in up here. As we mentioned, we just completed the stadium plan and program up there, so phase 1 of that will be getting underway soon. We have the Humanities building right here, the Learning Commons, Tarleton Center, and then, so those are all new construction or renovation projects. Take questions later. And then the areas in blue have been discussed for demolition. We're not sure when those might happen, but those are, we've talked about taking out the housing here, Ferguson and Bender, and Moody and Goff. Those have been projects that have been under discussion for several years of, when do these buildings go? And then, of course, the campus quad or green space here that's going in. So that leads us basically to this map, which is a representation of what the campus will look like in 2015. And so you can see here, and we've indicated also the areas of these, the inter-campus streets that have been closed off to vehicular traffic. Once again, illustrating a similar idea with the pedestrian streets in blue, the yellow streets being kind of minor neighborhood type streets, and the red streets being more major roads surrounding campus. Give yourselves a way to think about things. So everything in purple here are your main pedestrian areas. So you can see again these pedestrian roads that we've closed off, and you can start to kind of see where your pedestrian areas have been concentrated, where you've got malls for people to walk on, to gather, to find their ways through campus spaces. And one of the great things about looking at campuses is that you have all these diverging little kind of cow paths almost that sometimes get paved over from students just cutting across the lawn, and they decide to put a sidewalk in. But I think those are one of the neat things when you look at an area like you can see where the campus is. And another thing about your campus is that it is very walkable. There are a lot of parking lots in some places that make it maybe appear like the next building is really far away. But starting from this point, this first ring here, concentric to that, is a 5-minute walk radius. And the second ring is a 10-minute walk radius. So given the right design and the right attitude towards walking, you do have a very imageable campus in terms of the pedestrian standpoint. This is one of my favorites always too. So everything in the red is currently a parking lot. And like as Andrew was speaking to, it is a land hog. We need parking, but it also often takes away from the experience we have as a pedestrian or as a user of the space in another way. So there are currently about 4,600 parking spots on campus, and the campus is growing. So we need to discuss ways that the parking can be managed, whether it's through vertical parking ramps or other strategies to reduce demand. Another thing I think everybody here might be interested in is just the parking breakdown between purple being commuter lots, this blue color being faculty and staff lots, and I know everybody is attached to their parking, so whenever you bring up parking, it's can be a hot topic around the campus community. And then yellow being visitor and orange being resident. And then, of course, we've got kind of our breakdown of campus uses. And so what you can start to see from this is, the red is kind of your main academic functions. You've got this academic core right here. You've got the sort of, the business school area stranded over there, just a little bit from the central academic core. And then, of course, a big concentration of housing up here, athletics, student life areas with the rec center and the dining hall and the student life center. So that, and then administrative functions in orange and support in the brown. And one last thing we took a look at here is building heights. So you do start to see that there's a pretty good level of density being developed on campus. Much different than the rest of the community in a lot of ways. With your highest buildings being around 4 stories. I don't know why this isn't right. 3 to 4 stories in a lot of the areas. Some 2-story buildings and actually very few single-story buildings on campus.
And then in closing, a couple more slides here before we get to the question and answer session. But what Paul led you through is the existing conditions from a functional use perspective. A couple more slides here to talk about design analysis. We're interested in views and the focal landscapes. And again, harking back to when I was talking about campus landscape, preserving the high-quality focal landscapes and extending those type of ideas elsewhere. You can see that the major campus mall area here with the new green space coming in is a major focal green space. By the nursing hall, there's another one there. And then extending these views, both positive, ones that are already in existence, and ones that can be improved, like the view down Vanderbilt Street, terminating into the football stadium. And harkening back to places like this, right in front of the Autry building and the library. We look at axial relationships, which you may find in a lot of other campuses you've been on. They do exist here as well. And again, focusing on major views that could be improved upon. And also understanding good space enclosure, the sense that you have buildings on all sides of you, and you have this kind of courtyard or this traditional campus quad space defined. And again, spaces are defined by the exterior buildings. And that's what you have already here in front of the admin building, in front of the library, between the nursing and science hall, you have really good components of campus landscape. Just as a quick idea, this is looking west on Vanderbilt. This is Traditions Hall. This is the science building. And we just, as a what-if question, what if you had something terminating the focal point along Vanderbilt? Some type of gateway or tower element or something like that as you entered into the football stadium on that side and terminating this view. And again, thinking about this as a future pedestrian zone. Or smaller axial relationships, such as this one along the Trogdon House. Again, very positive campus space, really awesome space to be replicating that elsewhere. We're also identifying gaps or where there's room for improvement. What you see behind me in green is what we'd call a really high quality, desirable space to be. In red, spaces that could be improved upon from a landscape perspective. And in blue, we're calling these choice buildings, which if you're a student on campus, you live in the student housing, you have to go to class in the academic buildings, but where are the buildings that you're choosing to go for other types of activity? Dining, advisory, or student group meetings in the student center, the rec center, those types of experiences too. And really those spaces, the ones that are in blue behind me here, are spaces that are nodes of activity throughout the hours of the day. In fact, you may see, a lot of students or faculty, standing outside of the recreation center. So we're just recognizing movements between those buildings in order to just understand what we have to work with as planners going forward from this process. Area, character, and quality. We just highlighted some areas here that, again, you have a large and wide swath of area that is a high-quality campus experience. You have some areas, the ones in red, that maybe could be improved upon from a pedestrian connection standpoint and overall tying into the campus. And then you have some in-between spaces. A couple examples behind me here, looking at what we kind of describing what we mean. And then finally, the gateways. As Paul has highlighted previously, there's some really high-quality gateways indicated in white with the stone fences. And there's what we call a campus edge when you're driving along Washington and you're heading towards downtown. You look off to the left and you see the tall trees and the nice setback yard. You know that that's the campus. And that's what we're talking about with a nice edge, a good aesthetic value for people who go to the campus every day or people who are just passing by for the first time. It kind of sticks out in their mind. Picture the gates. And we've made it to the end. So we don't have a concluding slide, but what we do have is plenty of time for questions and answer. I think we do have, you can shout from the back. I think this mic over here is on to walk down. We have plenty of time to entertain any questions you all might have. And thanks for being so patient through our presentation. And most of you not falling asleep. Question right there?
On one slide, I saw that academic support, multicultural affairs, international affairs, so on and so forth, and academic advising were featured. Have those been talking points at all?
Yeah, that was brought up in our discussion with the provost, and talking about, I think most of those needs are met in the student center right now. Could be wrong, or the Tarleton Center, but providing a space for those to grow and expand in the future is what we mean by that.
Thank you.
Yes, right there.
The 2020 plan talked about a research park, and I didn't hear the word research mentioned anywhere in here other than at the agricultural center. Is research something you're still looking at?
I would say it is, but not necessarily in a research park
Okay.
mindset. So the research buildings and research space use would be within the existing campus, on the existing campus, not a separate area. Very good question. We'll go blue shirt and then we'll come down here.
I saw under the new stadium expansion, there was a dark blue area in the stadium area. What was that designated as? The new expansion had a dark blue space in which you talked about the student center, the dining hall, the library. See that dark blue under there?
Here,
Go to the stadium, right there, that long rectangle.
this right here?
Yes.
Yeah, that is the new, that would be the press box and the hospitality space and the new west entrance to the
Oh,
stadium.
okay. I understood that to be for students, so they know what that's.
Yeah.
It's a choice destination is what that's indicating.
A choice destination.
Right.
Yep. Any question?
Again, going off the 2020 plan, there was some talk of an event center being kind of by the Memorial Stadium. Was there any discussion about that?
Not in the next 5 years, basically, but long range potentially. Any question there?
I may be wrong, but I've always understood that the city has a cap on the size of how tall a building can be at 4 stories. And besides that, is there an advantage to going up when we're so landlocked,
Right.
we're so surrounded by real estate? What's the advantages or disadvantages of going up?
A couple different advantages. Better utilization of your existing land. And we're not saying like, 20-story building here, but, 5 stories or 6 stories could be feasible. So just better utilization of the existing land, bit more compact design. I think those would be the essential hallmarks, really. And for academic and research buildings, they can be that tall and work well. You have an elevator, but we don't, doesn't need to be a tall residence hall or something like that.
Why not?
Well, that could be resident. Let me cite you an example. It wouldn't have to be a skyscraper or a really tall building beyond 6 stories. I don't think that would be appropriate from an urban design perspective for this campus in Stephenville.
I think the other, we could ask that question of the city. That discussion has never come up specifically in terms of building height limitations. However, this is a university, is a part of the state university systems, and by regulatory authority, the city doesn't have jurisdiction. However, most campus public state universities we work with in Texas try to have a good nod towards the local jurisdictional requirements, because there's a cooperative agreement on a lot of different issues within the community, as there are. We have learned quite effectively, I think, here in Stephenville. That said, in terms of how we might address the limitations, I think I have to deal more with a lot of the kind of the stuff that we're just discussing here a moment, which is appropriateness of context. And as Andrew alluded, a 20-story tower sitting right next to a residential neighborhood is not an appropriate contextual fit. So that doesn't only apply at the campus edges, but it applies even in the campus core. I don't think a 20-story building.
I don't know that anybody's talking about the Mirage Hotel. But I'm just questioning for office buildings, office spaces at a premium. I'm sure it's like that on every other campus. And going up might be less invasive in terms of the community.
Right.
Than tearing out, homes and businesses and other things that are generating tax revenue.
Yeah, and that's an important consideration, because I think because the infill strategy, building on land the university already has. Larger buildings would be more optimal use of that land resource.
I think the good news is what Paul was just showing in his diagram a moment ago. The university actually has not very many one-story buildings. That's one thing that we find out quite frequently. We get on campuses and we start touring around. It's like people are going, oh, we're landlocked, we're out of space, what are we ever going to do? And there's a lot of one-story buildings that are occupying a lot of premium real estate on campus. You've actually already had some vertical development going on. I think looking at responsible utilization of the land is what we're interested in.
Other questions in the back?
This raises, this is another question, I guess. In terms of utility or energy use, does it make a difference in terms of concentration of buildings or how much space there is in between them? Does that have an impact on utility or energy use, or is that a negligible factor? Because you got to ship in, you got to ship energy from one place to another.
Exactly, yeah. There's loop systems and horizontal runs of utilities.
Right.
Thus having a building, closer together would then reduce the cost of running utilities.
But is it a lot, or is it not that significant?
I think it's
It's a hard question.
Yeah,
to
it's a hard
answer in general.
question. It all depends on the loop, the configuration, the layout of the buildings, and the level of utilization of those utilities of the individual buildings.
And then facility type gets into the big drive there, any type of green building idea, all those variables would have a larger impact on the energy use of that particular building.
But the point of your question, I think, is well made, is that looking at more responsible capacity of the utilization of the resources you have is kind of all of what we're talking about here. How do you better leverage the existing facilities? How do you expand on and enhance the existing utilities and infrastructure that you have? How do you build on what's great about Tarleton while raising the bar at the same time? And so those all become a series of, I think one of the things that when you look at a campus planning process, there's what the ground looked like before we ever arrived, and then there's what everything looks like with all the different improvements that we've had and all the layers of utilities and infrastructure and landscape. So it's a complicated question to answer. Yes, in a matter of speaking, all of those different elements have a mitigating factor when it comes to sustainability of the campus over the long term, both from a physical resource campus to an environmental perspective as well. Any other questions?
In the back?
I think you mentioned spreading out Washington Street. Can you expand on that? Is there any ideas about how to go about doing that?
Yeah, there's been some discussions with the Washington Street realignment around the curve. You all may be familiar with right through here. Can we hear a little more about that, maybe? We understand that there's some traffic kind of safety from a pedestrian's perspective and vehicular traffic through that area, and that there's been some early preliminary discussions with softening that curve, although there's been no design ideas offered by TxDOT or anybody else at this time. But that's certainly something from the university's perspective that is really important, is providing for safe crossing of that street, making sure vehicles can control themselves through the curve. But also, just really, it's not just the curve here, but it's the condition of the road from end to end here that from the university kind of aesthetic perspective wants to have nice sidewalks, trees, signage, that kind of thing to present that front face for the university. So that's part of the larger Washington Street discussion. The realignment is certainly one component of that. And also with the realignment too, the intersection at Lillian and Washington Street is a controlled intersection right now. And a lot of vehicles enter and exit campus through there. So when thinking about redesigning that area, certainly there has been some discussion for vehicular traffic flow as well as pedestrian safety. And that's something that we'll likely get into in more detail going forward, is just exactly what that realignment might look like. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
In relation to parking, the idea of parking garages is thrown out there, correct?
Yep.
If so, what locations on campus were identified as possible locations for those garages? Or do you know?
Well, I have a lot of different ideas, but we haven't discussed any with the steering committee yet. And when we come back for the Vision Symposium next month, that's exactly the kind of level we'll be zooming into, is where they might be, how big they would be, how many there would be. We don't know yet. But we just completed a campus master plan for Texas A&M University at Corpus Christi, and they just put in their first parking garage. And it's a big deal. And people love it. They located it pretty close to the campus, middle of the campus relatively, right outside the main academic core area. I don't know if you've been to that campus recently or not. But they set it up there in a way that would be highly desirable for people to park there. But you have to be cognizant of transportation, egress into and out of the garage from a vehicular perspective, and you have to balance that with the garage being, close to your existing buildings. So, but that's something we'll be looking at going forward. And you'll see, we'll be going, in a couple months from now, we'll have drawings with new building footprints on them, parking garages, new landscape areas, really kind of writing the script for the next 5 years in terms of different projects. And we'll be getting into a fairly detailed kind of overall plan.
Where do you think the parking deck ought to go?
Do what?
Where do you think the garage ought to go?
Right out here.
Right out here.
Is that near Fine Arts?
So that it's not on Washington.
Not on Washington?
No,
Okay.
not if you're wanting to keep, that aesthetic. This is our first view of the campus. This is the drive down.
Out here, you have
Yeah.
access to the science,
And it's
to
right in the middle.
us, to ag, to math, the student center, the cafeteria, the whole shooting match right out here. And you could still have events in this building during the day when the lot is now full of students. And have your community come in if you had one level for community out there.
Any other thoughts?
That's a good one.
I agree.
We're talking about the holy grail of campus planning right now, you know that.
Yeah.
Somebody in a Texas campus we work on, somebody told me one time, they said, driving a car in Texas or maybe pickup is an inalienable right. So it's something we have to consider.
Did you have a question or comment?
I have a question. Is there any, since we're drawing from many of the major urban centers in Texas, is there any talk or vision around increasing the amount of social amenities on our campus? Or, is there any, comparisons being done against our other state campuses in reference to, what they could do to increase that?
It's a good question.
Well, let me turn the question back around. What did students do here?
Well, it's a lot of bars.
It's a lot of what?
There's a lot of bars in town. But if you're wanting to do like bowling or, if we had like an aquarium, I don't know, just something else we could get into.
Extracurricular kind of recreational activities.
Maybe even drawing, increasing the tax base that we have to, surround the area.
We find in a lot of cases, we do some town gown planning for the college and city planning together. And sometimes you find really vibrant campus districts across the street from campus that has some of those activities. And that's certainly something that we've talked about in general, is how to improve the campus edge. We haven't specifically identified any needs just yet, exactly, but something to definitely consider.
Let's say, one thing that the campus is doing that ends up having a dramatic impact on it from a university perspective and from a community perspective is, because we saw this we did a master plan of Texas A&M in Kingsville. Has anybody been to Kingsville, Texas? I know it's a big tourist destination for a lot of people, right? So one of the challenges there at A&M Kingsville was how do we keep the students here, and they went about, part of one of the ways they went about doing that was really increasing a lot of on-campus housing, the capacity to really capture those students. And then the next part of that conversation was, let's talk about improvements to our student life facilities, let's talk about improvements in the student union and all the other incremental components that are a part of the entertainment and experience of student life. So with the growth of a residential community, which you guys are largely a residential campus right now, despite historic perceptions of being a commuter university, with that actually comes a critical mass of students that continue to be in the community into the evening and into the weekends, that actually starts to sustain reasonable economic growth and businesses that will foster that entertainment. So I think you're kind of at a transitionary point. The state of Texas is experiencing a lot of growth, and and the university and Stephenville have to accommodate the growth that we're experiencing as a reciprocal impact there. And I think there's a lot of benefit opportunity down the road. Not all of which will manifest itself in a 5-year development plan here, but I think is a great opportunity from the university perspective.
Any questions over there?
Going
Green
off,
time and right behind.
going off of kind of the same, what y'all were talking about, did you observe an immediate need to expand our student center? Because the lack of space on campus has almost created an office building environment in the
It's an
student
office building.
center.
There's nothing for students.
So, do you see that as immediate need? The second question is, I noticed that the track is being moved onto 2 of the rec
North of
facilities, that thousands of students utilize those recs. So is there a concern that we're reducing that from 4 to 2 fields?
First answer to your first question is no, but we do now. Your first question was about student center space. So if that's a need that we should be planning for, it's certainly something we can look at in terms of either adding on to that facility if feasible, or some other type of identification elsewhere, either through renovation or a new building. A second dining hall might feed into that actually a little bit. Second question about rec fields is a really important one. We actually had a conversation earlier today about that, because you're right. There is a track on 2 baseball diamonds right here. And we know from a student life perspective and recreation opportunities are really important. And you have a lot of housing right across the street, right?
Yeah.
So the discussion will then become, how can we best accommodate recreation sports, either on the existing campus here or elsewhere on university property? Egg Center might be one opportunity to do that with a brand new facility potentially. Or utilizing what we do have here with the 2 fields and the 2 soccer fields, or the football fields right here as well. So
we had a great discussion about that in the advisory committee meeting, and I'm glad you caught that and brought that up, because it's a challenge that every major university ends up experiencing frequently at some point in time, where you hit that stage where, especially with Andrew mentioned the Texas A&M Corpus Christi campus, they're not very landlocked, but they're pretty waterlogged. And they got to that same point where their enrollment trajectory was going up, and they were building more space, and they were starting to occupy parking spaces. And their last major on-campus recreation field just got occupied by on-campus housing. Great, residential campus. But they just moved across the mainland and are expanding a new athletics and rec sports campus. Well, with that comes triggers conversations about transportation and safety and security and all the different components of that. It's important to be able to maintain a level of green space on campus that has the balance to be able to, there's a place to throw a football, there's a place to toss a frisbee, there's a place to, set up a goal and kick around the ball with your friends.
You'd have to be able to walk on the grass to do that.
Yeah, and there are also the organized, structured, intramurals and other events that become, large destination draws. So I think there may be an ability to take some of the more organized sporting activities on campus and accommodate them, like a lot of other institutions, like Wisconsin has, like University of Texas has, like Texas Tech University has, as the campus sort of goes through those growing pains as well.
So is another question, you still have a question there?
What are the major,
I'm sorry.
what are the major pushback issues from the community with the campus expansion? Have any of these been brought up? Are there any issues with the community with our expansion? Are there concerns about housing?
We don't know yet, but we're meeting with them this evening. And in terms of expansion, for the next 5 years of this plan is focused on land that the university currently owns and that are utilizing what they already have.
I think we will meet with the community this evening. We spoke about the city quite a bit, and I think some of the bigger concerns that they raise, without getting into the nuances of what you do on your campus, is what your business is what are the impacts on water, what are the impacts on sewer, what are the impacts on stormwater infrastructure systems, and what are the impacts on traffic.
Because the one thing that may impact vertical growth is the ability of the community to fight fire on campus. because Stephenville has a limited package of firefighting equipment,
Right.
and that limits what we can actually do with it.
Yep, that's an important, definitely consideration. Ladder trucks. There's a question up top here.
Yes, I was just wondering if part of the conversations that have happened so far is included the thought that maybe we need to get the data center, IT data center out of an academic building.
I don't think we've talked about that yet. Oh, yeah, I listen to a lot of stuff. But that is certainly something that we can consider. And in fact, tomorrow we're meeting with the facilities group. And I know we talked to the IT director for the stadium project, but we can revisit that if that's a need, definitely. Where is it at currently? I should know this. I can't remember.
Oh, wait,
It's in the grant.
Center Florida, the grant building.
That's right, okay. Okay.
Yeah, really nice to hear this stuff.
See ya.
Hi. I noticed that you had a lot of buildings that were set for demolition. And I guess my question is while we are in this, I mean, obviously if it's in the 5-year plan, they're planning on demoing it in 5 years. What are the plans for the buildings that are going to be demoed for their new location / facilities?
Right, so.
And I'm speaking particularly from the horticulture center, is we can't do without horticulture classes, so where are we going to be teaching those?
Yeah, good question.
Okay.
I'm glad you're here from horticulture. It'll have to be accommodated elsewhere. Maybe,
Okay, good.
maybe at the agricultural center,
Okay,
but the decision hasn't been made yet.
okay. So nobody's going to demo my building.
Right. You're not going to be put on.
Well, I've heard this before, actually, so it's a serious concern. Okay.
I think to speak to that for a second, I think that diagram shows more buildings that maybe have been identified as having some deficiencies that would like to be taken down and replaced with different ones.
And that's true with
and that all depends on a lot of factors. But
and the other residential halls as well they're functional to a certain extent, but they're also dated and likely an upgrade in terms of a new type of housing is more desirable now. So they become antiquated, which is why those are on the list as well. I think we'll go talk and then back to you.
Is the presentation for the public forum, is it the same or is it?
Same thing.
Different folks? Okay.
Same thing.
The agriculture building that we're talking about in the TRB possibly, has there been any talk about, I know that the architects have been on campus or a group of architects and talking to people, has there been any talk about where that building may be located? I know that it was mentioned in one of the slides as a possibility, one of the top things that we're looking at, but I haven't seen anywhere where that building may or may not be located.
That's right, yeah. That's certainly something we're going to be evaluating over the summer here, is where that building might want to go. We haven't identified a footprint for it here today, but that's certainly our consideration. And it being more academic in nature, obviously, it intuitively makes sense that it is part of the campus core, or close to the other academic buildings in the library.
And as Paul was kind of pointing out some of the, or Andrew, I can't remember, was pointing out some of the campus edges, campus gateways, a building like that has an opportunity to be a great edge facility that starts to create a physical, visual dynamic and aesthetic of the campus and speak to the prominence of the institution. So at one point in time, I think that conversation was, that building was tossed around as the Gates building or the Gateway building, like it was a portal of some kind. So I think, thinking about this and the opportunity for this facility, I think is one that we definitely want to explore. There are lots of opportunity locations, I think, as these guys were just pointing out, in terms of where you could put existing facilities in the future. It's a matter of balancing those with the most effective transition. And we're promised not to just provide umbrellas and buildings. I think it was one other question. Yeah,
Did you point to in blue?
Is that a good one?
So I think a couple couple of things on the on the planning phase of this, because we've had several, building things happen and shifting across campus. And I think their concern is valid on the horticulture center, because this has happened before whenever they're deciding to knock buildings down or relocate people and not plan where to put everyone. And the comment down here about Thompson Student Center being very tight and making sure that everyone is being taken care of before we just decide to knock a building down or relocate someone. And that's not completely being taken care of before it happens.
I think that's one of the primary reasons we're here, is to help identify phasing and a logical sequence of meeting new facility needs, accommodating backfill or renovation opportunities, and to help plan that kind of domino effect, if you will, to accommodate the shifting needs, especially over the next 5 years, but even beyond that as well. So, for example, like the horticulture facility would be accommodated in the plan before it would be removed.
Well, I think that my concern is if some departments are being taken care of and then small departments are being shoved underneath the carpet, and we'll just find a place on campus for you, but it might be the closet. And I think that all the programs on campus are important and should be found in space before we just decide to do something.
And not just space, but actually talk to them and find out what the needs are to make sure that it's
exactly
going to be usable for the long term and not for 1 year or 2 years.
Yes, actually talk to the person who's being relocated, because that's not always happening. To find out what space needs are needed. I was relocated last year and never asked what I needed. And facilities were not provided.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a goal on our part to meet not just adequacy, but to optimize as much as possible people's space that they need.
One of the things we'll be meeting with, I think Andrew maybe mentioned earlier, later this week we'll be meeting again with the provost, follow-up conversations with the academic deans. Again, we're looking at this at a campus master planning level. The master plan is an implementation plan. If you remember my earlier slide about implementation strategies, as the university moves forward on the implementation approaches for individual projects, be it a building project, part of the A&M system requirements is in the development of a functional space program, a program of requirements, if you will, for individual building projects. That defines the parameters of the spaces in an individual building that accommodates the programmatic uses of those. So there's kind of a structured process in moving forward beyond the plan. We're looking at it still, somewhat at a 10,000-foot level, but prioritizing some implementation strategies moving forward. And then, the devil is certainly in the details as you move forward into the implementation of individual projects over the years to come. We probably have time for maybe one more question before we go ahead and wrap up this session.
Maybe we'll do 2 more. I saw your hand's been up for a while. What do you?
Has there been any discussion, if you all consider the major events facility on campus, such as commencement and other large events in which safety may be an issue at this time? I know you have to look at just existing land, but you've already taken 2 rec sport fields and have other land up there you might should consider.
For large events like commencement, we talked about that with the Memorial Stadium project, which will increase in capacity to host larger events like commencement.
Outdoors.
There have been a longer-term conversation, I think, as somebody mentioned, about some kind of an arena or a coliseum facility. It hasn't been identified in our early conversation. It's about a 5-year priority, but it's certainly something that I think remains an interest of the university to, and even in some of the conversations that we have when we're talking about athletics with the city, maybe the opportunities for some kind of shared or joint use facility that could accommodate those functions in some location on campus. And that's not, this I think is a good opportunity to reiterate the intent of our engagement. There's a master plan that somebody indicated a little bit earlier, the 2020 plan that looked holistically at lots of different points of the campus. What's happened is you guys have experienced significant growth over the last 5 years, and you built a lot over the last 5 years. So this is a great opportunity to go back in, retest, retool, see what's happened, see what hasn't, and why, and really look at the next 5-year window and make sure that that 10-year projection had been done in such a way that it could be very reasonably accommodated within the context of things that have already changed. It's not to say that there aren't long-term vision projects that are still out there beyond the 5-year horizon that we still want to accommodate in the plan, but they may not just be prioritized as those first projects down the pipeline.
There's one final question in green there.
Yes, sir. I understand this is kind of still in infancy, but for the next 3 to 6 months, will y'all and the university administration plan on publishing this on our talk website or on your website? I understand it's changing. Next month when y'all come on campus, more questions, but is it going to be open to the public to view past tonight or over the next 6 months?
Yes. Okay. We'll post, I believe we'll work through your website to post this presentation and the final documentation.
Will there be opportunity for input into that?
I'm sorry?
Will there be opportunity to have input through that? Questions or thoughts or suggestions?
There will be a follow-up forum similar to this as we go progressing through the rest of the project. So we're going to have, some of the early ideas to be able to share back with you, get comment and feedback on as we progress through the project.
That forum will probably happen sometime in July. Really, I guess we haven't set a date yet, but.
Yeah, so don't go on vacation this summer, okay? But that's a very good conclusion here to our session is this is our first opportunity to meet with you as a campus community. And I counted, I think 100, I think I got 109 wow, first of all, to all of you. That's, we do these things all over the country, and to get this level of participation from the faculty and staff of the university is really terrific. So thanks for coming, thanks for listening, thanks for providing your input, and share any of this information with your friends, and we will look forward to further soliciting your input and getting your feedback as we progress through the project. Thank you very much.